Showtime! The Capital G show starts right now.
What's up YouTube, Capital G here, doing a discussion on Infernoids and a new series I'm going to call Boomer Bust. Basically, Boomer Bust is a giant archetype discussion. I'm going to be discussing newer archetypes as they're released, whether that be structure deck, booster set, or kind of like a combination set, something like the Secret Forces, or another example would be like the Hidden Arsenal sets. Or it can be even archetypes that are getting renovations. They're getting a whole bunch of new supports. Examples of this would be, what's about to happen with Heroes. And then if you look in the past, Six Samurai, pretty much 2 times over when they got Synchros and Phantom Darkness when they, got like a Six Sam United and all that good stuff. All right, so I'm going to kind of, talk about a deck for people who don't know much about the deck, tell you about its play style, what's good about it, what's bad about it. I'll try and come to some type of consensus as to what the deck is going to do competitively, and then I'll talk about if the deck is fun to play and any other just random obscure facts. So if you didn't know anything about Infernoids, they were released in the most recent set, The Secrets of Eternity, and to me it's kind of their set. If you look at the lore of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you follow the dual terminal, and I promise that video is going to come, it'll be multiple videos. Anyways, the Infernoids live inside of the Cleese, which when I heard that I was like, the fuck? And oddly enough, despite the fact that they're supposed to be the ultimate evil, they're not actually as strong as the Cleese, which made me think the double fuck. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it pretty much is what it is. So it makes sense that if they came after the Cleese, they would come in the set after the Cleese, after new challengers. They're basically a fire fiend archetype that revolves around special summoning monsters by banishing other monsters in that archetype. The crazy thing about this archetype is you cannot normal summon any of them. There are 7 currently. I believe somebody told me that there are 9 Clee monsters because there's 9 pods, which means that there's going to be 9 Infernoids unless Konami just wants to do some random shit. So we've currently got 7 of them, and yeah, you banish to summon them. Now, interesting enough, they all have incredible effects. When I break down an archetype, I kind of look at, the archetype's monsters and then the support. If you just look at the monsters on face value, they're pretty damn amazing. They kind of remind me of Glads, where each card has like a different utility, and I don't remember all the names. I kind of just remember them by level, and I kind of remember their effects. This guy is basically evac. He bounces any face-up card. And notice I said face-up card, not face-up monster. So you can actually, bounce like a sacrifice your opponent has on a monster if you need to game them or something like that. This guy blows up monsters. This guy is MST. He has built-in MST. This guy, if he does battle damage, he gets to pick a card out of your opponent's hand. This guy's even better. He can attack, and then at the end of the battle phase, he can banish. This dude is a double attacker. He just has to send a monster to the graveyard by battle. And then this is Big Chicken. Big Chicken is basically Judgment Dragon and Gladiator Heraclinos like fucking on crack, because not only does he or can he nuke the field when he's special summoned, and he's level 10, so he's automatically out the towers, but during either player's turn, he has a quick effect that basically gives you Solemn Judgment. It negates monster effects, it negates in the damage step, it negates spells, it negates traps, anything that you want. You just have to tribute a monster, and it does not have to be him. So you can have like a Lila or a Blaster, and yeah, you can randomly tribute those because that makes sense in the archetype, right? Also, that monster is totally banished, or whatever you negate is banished. It's not actually sent to the graveyard, so that's even better because shit that triggers in the graveyard, if it would, it just wouldn't. Hello, Dante. All right, now, the premise of Infernoids from a competitive standpoint is that you never really want to burn yourself out in the early game. You don't want to summon, a lot of these guys, the higher ups, that can be special summoned from the graveyard or the hand. Just the lower guys, most of them just are special summoned from the hand. You don't want to burn yourself out trying to summon Big Chicken, immediately banishing 3 Infernoids, because, that's like over half of your hand. So what players like to do is players like to mill, and they like to get them in the graveyard and summon them that way, thus Reasoning and Monster Gate. Since these guys can't be special summoned except by their own effects, they bypass Reasoning and Monster Gate, and you just basically load up your graveyard. Now, one of the great things and the bad things about adding the milling mechanic to aid Infernoids is you kind of add luck into your deck. Reasoning is an incredible card, but it's very, very volatile. If your opponent calls that level, you can be absolutely hammered, or if you just don't mill enough, you can be hammered. The weird thing about Infernoids right now is, despite the fact that the deck works best by constantly milling monsters into the graveyard, they don't actually have a support card that actually does that for them. You know, I actually looked at the support cards: Void Launch, Expansion, Void Seer, and Eye of the Void. This is supposed to be the card that does it for you. Unfortunately, it's a trap, which automatically means it's slow, and it only activates in the standby phase for some stupid reason. It only dumps 2 Infernoids per turn in the graveyard, and it's like, why would you do that when you could basically just, you know, activate a card like Charge the Light Brigade and potentially mill 3 into the graveyard? I know it's not an exact science whenever you're milling, because it's randomized instead of specifically dumping, but it just seems like there's a higher ceiling there. So Infernoids, while all the monsters are incredible at face value, their support is ridiculously lacking. Void Seer is actually pretty good. It's kind of like Forbidden Lance on crack. Basically, you target an Infernoid monster, it's unaffected by any of your opponent's effects, and then you can banish it from the graveyard, and if the monster would be destroyed, then it just wouldn't be. And you can activate both of those effects during the same turn, so it's even better than cards like Breakthrough Skill and whatnot. It's incredible. But the problem is, you look at their other cards, Void Launch. This doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't give the deck what it needs as far as milling. You look at Eye of the Void, which for some dumb reason they made an ultra rare, which I compared that to other ultra rares of archetypes like Artifact Sanctum and Alpha Nova and Sinister Shadow Games, and I was just like, you're not nearly on that level. Wasn't Sylvan Charity an ultra? That was an amazing card too. This one is but. It lets you special summon an Inferno from your hand, ignoring the conditions, but you can't activate its effect, or its effect is negated. So basically, it's a -1 to summon a monster that you could, I guess, summon by using stuff in your graveyard. It should have been a quick play, and it should have summoned from the graveyard. Then it would have been near broken, and it would have adjusted for the crazy power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! That, you know, other decks like Burning Abyss and Cleese have. Now, one thing that I don't like that Konami did, they put a huge built-in restriction on all the Infernoids, and I think they did it so they couldn't, like, OTK basically every single game. The problem is, when you compare this restriction, and I'll tell you what it is. Basically, if you have levels or ranks that are equal to, that exceed the number 8 on field, i.e., if you have Lila and Blaster, because she's 4, he's 7, so that equals 11, that's higher than 8, you cannot summon any Infernoid, none of them. That also means that if you have Big Chicken on board who's 10, you can't summon any of these dudes to kind of back them up. You have to use either, you know, Blaster or other monsters to kind of back Big Chicken up, or just, you know, have them out there dolo or whatever. But they built that restriction in, and I didn't like it because, you know, if you hit Reasoning and you happen to get a ton of Infernoids in your graveyard, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to special summon, you know, 3 or 4 of them in one turn. If your opponent gets OTK, well then fuck them, that's their fault. When I look at a deck like Cleese, there's no restriction on pendulum summoning fucking 5 monsters. There's no restriction on how much you can pendulum in a turn. You just get 1 pendulum, but it's not like Konami says you can only pendulum 1 monster during the first time you pendulum, and then two monsters after that. You know, if Cleese can do that and OTK you, then I don't understand why this, which is supposed to be a new competitive deck, can't have, you know, its restriction taken away, because it really, really does hinder the deck, because you kind of have to summon these monsters in a particular order a lot of time to get the best out of them. So there is a level of skill there. Now, the good thing is, for that huge restriction, Konami did give them a free bonus, and it's one that it seemed obscure, and then it's like, when you think about it, in certain matchups, it's fantastic. Basically, every one of these dudes has DD Crow built right into them, except I don't think Big Chicken has it. But the rest of them, basically, they contribute another monster on field, or they contribute themselves, just any monster, and they get to banish a card from your opponent's graveyard. Keep in mind, a card, so it doesn't have to be a monster. Well, I guess with Crow, it doesn't either. So you can go after, like, Breakthrough Skill, or, you know, something random like that, or a rank up magic if you're playing against, like, Burning Abyss or something like that. And what's cool about this is, during your opponent's turn, it just makes it so easy to dodge things like enemy controller and snatch steal, banish their monsters. It gives you a huge edge, and like Burning Abyss and the Serteller matchup, because, you know, Serteller's like the Abuse, Call of the Haunted, and Oasis and Altier, and then you just banish it in them, and they're just sitting there like, oh wow, I look dumb. Against Burning Abyss, if they try and detach Sir or Graph, you can banish that before it actually even triggers, because monsters have to trigger where they were. They have to be in the same place where they trigger, and if the monster is banished, then it just won't happen. Now, cards that aid the deck, Blaster is obvious. I almost consider Blaster like unofficial support, but right now, players kind of are forced to play cards like Card Trooper or the Lightsworn engine, because there just isn't a consistent way of milling. I mean, you have these right here, but if you don't get them consistently turn one, you're going to be in kind of some deep doo-doo. The Lightsworn engine probably is the best way right now, because it gives you utility and milling. You know, this gives you draw support, this lets you synchro and gives you beater. This gives you ways to get rid of back row like Vanity, so that you can actually summon these guys, because this card and this card can be huge problems for the deck. If you have Vanities, keep in mind, you can't summon any of these. Blaster also gives you the ability to pop any card on the field, once again, another out to Vanities, and you can just use that card later to, you know, summon another monster. Now, also, you need to keep in mind that the lower level guys, when they activate their effects, they can't attack that turn, but for the most part, it's kind of irrelevant. You're kind of just taking the pluses at that point. The deck is incredibly fun to play. I think Reasoning is one of the most glorious and fun cards in the game to play, because it has a kind of a weird element to it. I feel like both players get kind of hyped when Reasoning is activated. It's kind of like how Question used to be back in the day, whenever you'd activate Question and you have to like think really hard, like what's at the bottom of their graveyard. I've actually seen in the OCG, they have an XC that creates OTKs with this deck, and you only run like one monster for Reasoning. I'll post a link on the video. Asian Eyes posted a video of it. It's actually really crazy. We can't do it in the TCG, and I think that could potentially be tier 1. Right now, from a competitive standpoint, they're too linked to Lightsworn, and they get floodgated kind of hard, whether it's this or Iron Wall. And believe me, Iron Wall, I cited in Stellar Knights because this matchup is so hard. You know, you just can't summon any of these guys. I think that it would have been better if Konami would have made some Xyz or Synchros, because you got to think, all these dudes do is special summon themselves, and they even have a restriction on that. And I mean, it'd have been nice if they could have, you know, built up to something else. I kind of feel like they're just new age Lightsworn in a sense, but even Lightsworn got Synchros, you know what I mean? Like, if they gave these guys a Synchro, if this would have been a tuner, you know what I mean? I can't really see them Xing consistently, because it would require just massive amounts of getting the right mills. But it would have been nice if they would have been able to have like a couple of Synchros or something like that. So let me know what you guys think of Infernoids. I'd say they're probably about tier 1.5 right now, but it's going to be interesting to see if people can come up with builds, because they are kind of like, they can have a lot of different engines splashed into them. I just don't think they're a splashable engine. Thank you guys for watching, as always.